I will start with a very short introduction of GameIS. I am Nir Miretsky. I'm the CEO of GameIS, the Israeli NGO that runs the gaming industry, kind of. We were founded around 7 years ago. It's an NPO, NGO. Everybody is volunteering. And we ran around a lot of events during the year. Our biggest one is the annual conference, around 800 people from the industry gathering together around July. Our other big event is the Unconference, the Gaming Unconference, which will be somewhere in the next few months. We also have a huge hackathon around January. And this is our traditional international session. I know that in the brochure it's called a panel, but this is not a panel. It will be a series of short lectures with enough time for Q&A on each of them. I think we curated, Guy Ulmer is the curator. Where is Guy? Guy here is the curator of this event, and he found a few very interesting talks that I'm sure all of you will be happy with them. I don't know, I blacked out. So I want to start with the traditional intro of Dr. Yossi Vardi. Yossi is hosting us for, this is the 6th year in a row, yes? From the first year of DLD Tel Aviv.
Good afternoon, everybody. One of the main goals of DLD Tel Aviv is to empower and enable and inspire the community of startups and of techies in the country. As you know, the great majority of participants are able to step in without registering and go to close to 100 free events. And we are doing it happily because we believe that the most important thing for a city or a country in order to empower startups is to empower community. Actually, I'm often asked what is the secret of Israel in the startup, and the secret is the ecosystem, people who are helping other people. But so we are trying to enable as many communities as possible to take advantage freely from DLD. Some of you attended one or more of the 23 meetups that were yesterday along Rothschild Boulevard. However, probably the most active and the most committed with the highest level of voluntarism of all the communities in Israel is GameIS. GameIS is running by a group of passionate people which are doing a fantastic job. They started the community before there was any gaming industry in the country, and together with them, Israel became one of the world leaders for computer games. The people are passionate, talented, nice, wonderful, and it's a great community. And we are happily, every year, give them one of our prime slots for them to take advantage of the event, to promote the community and to promote the idea of developing games in Israel. And here, Miretsky, come over. And Goldie, come also, without trying to insult everybody else, are two of the main pillars of this community. For me, It's a privilege and an honor to be associated with them. So guys, thank you very much for coming again to DLD and doing your whatever shtick you are doing here.
We also want to thank DLD for this long collaboration for many years since Javaport. I didn't plan to speak at all, but since Yossi called me on stage, I feel like my bar mitzvah, so I'll just talk for 1 minute about what GameIS is. So if you don't know it, or let's see, who's a member of GameIS in the audience right now? Can you raise your hand? Okay, so that's great. So if you're not a member of GameIS, you're welcome to join us. As Nir said, I'll elaborate a little more. It's a non-profit organization which is its sole purpose is to promote the Israeli digital game industry, and we do it in any possible way we can imagine, starting from communicating with journalism and the press about gaming issues, and there are plenty of them related to culture or related to business, with game companies being acquired or sold or gaining great exits. And the second aspect would be the collaboration with the academy, which is teaching the subject of game development in Israel. There are several places, some of them are in the audience right now, and we're communicating also with them and promoting them mutually. Another thing is we're a concentration of all or most of the Israeli game developers, thanks, as independent developers or companies. We're representing them, we're helping them benefit from one another, access to knowledge, access by connecting them to other companies or to companies abroad. We're helping them connect with investors. We're hosting delegations from around the world that are into the Israeli game development ecosystem. We're creating delegations abroad that are going almost every year, going to a location to meet other game companies. What else? We're currently conducting research, which Jeremy will speak right after me, about a research about the volume of the Israeli gaming market in order to help us promote our goals with municipalities and with the Israeli government. So basically we see as our mission anything that is going to help the Israeli game developers. You're very welcome to join us if you're in this ecosystem, being a developer, being an artist, being in marketing of games, a service provider, technical provider, any type of company or establishment related to games, your place is with us. We're continuing to grow. In the past 7 years, we have close to 2,000 members in our non-profit organization, and have a vast reach by mail and Facebook group of something that is approaching to 6,000 people. All in a very good spirit and voluntarily. So this is us, always open to get any help, any volunteers, any activity you like to suggest, or even better, take action and actually create and produce it. We provide help for that. So contact us if you like. That's it. What? Okay, so I won't present our moderator of this track, Guy Ulmer. He will come up after Jeremy, which is our first speaker. Jeremy is one of the founders of GameIS as well, very close to the heart of GameIS, also a creator of board games, who's released three commercial board games in the past year, and another one is coming up soon. Also, his day job is in Startup Nation Central, and he's the guy behind the initiative of creating this market research about the Israeli game industry. He will tell us about the current status and about this effort. So here's Jeremy Kletzkind.
Thank you very much. It's okay. It's really for me a big pleasure. It's family. I went, arrived in Israel 20 years ago, and like a little bird, when you get out from the egg, the first thing you see is your mother. And the first thing I met in Israel is this gaming industry and these few people. And with my French accent when I speak Hebrew and English, I can consider myself as a veteran somewhere here, right? 20 plus years in this industry, starting with esports and more. And today, I'm so happy being part of this, the DLD, the help, Yossi and Oscar and everything we do together for all these years. And this is a great opportunity to announce something we've been working very hard on for the last 6 months with the great support of a couple of players, the support of Kaydan, the support of Startup Nation Central, GameIS, with a lot of work on data, on mapping, because we have a lot of assumptions. Yossi said, global leaders. That's probably true, but leaders on what? We have to map this ecosystem. We have to be able to explain how it contributes to the Israeli economy, the growth and job creation, everything, so we can be part of this high-tech ecosystem. Because it's not simple. There are a couple of visionary people here that always put the gaming industry as part of this high-tech industry, like we are here today at DLD. But it's not something that is obvious to everyone. So we spoke with a lot of companies around the world, game studios. Sometimes even they are approaching Israel, considering opening something here, but they have a lot of questions. So analyze these questions. What are you looking for? It's not about tax incentives. They want value creation. And we spoke with investors, both in Israel and abroad, telling us, we're not investing in gaming. Why not? We don't know about it. Or we know about gaming, because we do gaming outside of Israel, but we don't know about gaming in Israel. We don't know about... So we've been separating regulations coming from the casino world, etc., and the perception of gambling, etc. We put it aside, and we said, this is the video game industry. It's a standalone industry that generates a lot of value for the entire ecosystem in Israel. So you can still contribute to this report because we will publish it in a couple of weeks. Of course, with Deloitte, we'll be doing some special activities around the release of this report. You can also contribute by stop selling your companies hundreds of millions of dollars, because you have to redo all of the visuals. Thank you, Plarium, not, and all the graphs. But yes, we are very happy. You can also contribute by connecting to the Finder, the database of Startup Nation Central, and update your data. We want it to be as accurate as possible. If you raised money, we recently had some good news with some good investments. If you have numbers to update there, it's important. And so really in the next few weeks we'll release it. We wanted it to be ready for today, but it was not ready for today. We really are, but we expect everyone to be part of explaining to the world and to the ecosystem locally and to the government in Israel, show off those data because they are good data and they will help us to grow. And this is the next stage. It's maturity. So thank you very much for your attention, and talk to me if you believe in some way that you can contribute to this report, and happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. I apologize on behalf of Plarium for the recent acquisition that made you have to change all these numbers. But we're looking forward to that, and we'll be sure to self-update everything we can, and I recommend everyone else to do it as well. The more accurate the report will be, the easier it will be for us to pitch as a group, to pitch to the government and external organizations the value of the gaming ecosystem in Israel. So that's it for now. Nir thanked many people, but I think you forgot to thank Orly and Ruth from Oscar TV, who actually organized all of the production, the whole thing, not just our little tent, but everything around here. So thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you very much, Orly. We have about 2.5 hours of, it's a mix of very interesting lectures and some Q&A panels. The first one will be with Eike Sandorfe from Google. So please come on stage, Eike. I'll be interviewing him, and you can keep that in the background, okay? Or just the video. We have video? Okay.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Okay, so hi, Eike. A bit closer, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I personally had the chance to work with Eike already as part of my job at Plarium. But I would like, for the rest of the audience, I would like you, first of all, to introduce yourself. Tell us exactly what kind of things you're doing at Google.
Well, again, hello everybody, and thanks for having me. And thanks for being part of this distinguished group of GameIS. My name is Eike. I'm based here in Tel Aviv, and I look after Play business development, most prominently after apps and games development out of Israel and the Middle East. During my day job, I work with a group of dedicated business development professionals who look after some game developers and try to bring and best practices out into the ecosystem. That means that we're engaging directly at these kinds of events with developers and promoting Google services and trying to explain how to best integrate them and how to best leverage Google Play as a global game development and game distribution platform.
Okay. So to start with, I think that I'll ask the $1 million question first, right? And it's actually $1 million in terms of the impact Google can have on developers is actually getting featured in the Play Store, right? You guys are looking for interesting games for all kinds of things, and I think what the developers targeting your ecosystem would like to know is what are the best approaches, what should they do, what kind of stuff are you looking for when you have different considerations for the games and apps that you're selecting.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, build an awesome game. That's what it's all about. We're looking continuously at what's coming live on the store, in the beta tracks, in the early access tracks, and in the production tracks. So we're really monitoring all the new games and apps that come live on a daily basis. And our editorial team is very eager to identify new games and new apps that we can actually highlight in front of as many users as possible. Now, you asked the $1 million question is how to get featured on Play, and believe me, I'm getting this question on a daily basis for the last 2 years. So I continuously underline the fact that we are looking at quality and the main KPIs that we all share. So apart from obviously downloads and how well you're distributing your app and game, we're looking primarily at engagement and app quality. So if you translate that into what you can actually do in order to increase the likelihood of getting featured, it's driving a high-performing game that gets continuously good ratings and good comments and make sure that it stays above 4.0 rating. That's kind of a good cut-off to look at. And that you're looking at engagement metrics which are in line or better than the industry average. Just to give you a high-level assumption, and that's really a number that is very fluid and changes constantly, but if you're above 40-50% retention on day one, you're already in relatively good shape. So making sure that people that are downloading your game are actually opening it, they're playing with it, engaging with it, and that's definitely a good practice. Maintaining that over 28 days is absolutely vital. In our industry, and I'm sure this is not new to many of the people in this room, retention and engagement is a key metrics, and it's very difficult to maintain. It's very difficult to maintain people over the course of a month and to continuously engage them into your game. So when we're looking at KPIs and how games are performing on the store, the day 1, day 7, and day 28 retention are key factors that we look at outside of innovation, graphical innovation, and game mechanics. Outside, I would also recommend 2 things. Well, one in particular, which is stay on top of the Android developer blog. Almost on a weekly basis, do we launch new activities and new features and promotions that you can freely sign yourself up for. So we have external forms that you can really just fill out let our editorial team know about your titles that are coming out, your performance metrics, and why they are worth highlighting. Just to name a couple of examples, more recently we launched a collection across the entirety of Middle East, like all Arabic-speaking markets. So if you had a title that supports these languages and these markets, we're very eager to include them in some of our promotional collections.
Okay, so the key things are follow the developer's blog,
Yes.
and good retention numbers. You want players games that players keep getting back to, right?
Assuming that you can keep a minimum threshold of quality. So kind of that's the basis. You want to create a good working game that users engage with over time, and then make sure that you let us know
good
about
game
it.
first, and then retention numbers. So it's a good thing that you brought it up, because my follow-up question was actually, do you have any best practices for increasing retention numbers? Did you notice if, for example, games that keep pushing new content out all the time, they get higher retention numbers, or is there any other advice perhaps?
Sure. So over the last year or so, we have seen a strong shift from looking at the download metrics as a key KPI, like how many people download your game and open it, to a retention and engagement KPI world, where we're actually looking at how often users are playing the game, how long they are engaging with it, and how much time they're spending on the actual title. With that in mind, there has been really a push for what we call live ops. You can imagine tournaments or live events that will drive a number of players into the same game at the same time in order to compete. The underlying truth here is that multiplayer drives engagement. If you invite your friends to play with you, that automatically doubles the amount of users you have on your game. So with that, we're trying to do a lot of activities on our store, i.e. on the storefront, on the Google Play app, to drive live ops and to surface different live ops that happen within the games that the user has installed. So to just give you an example, if let's say one of the Plarium titles does a tournament that users have to sign up for on a Wednesday, but they can only play it on a Friday in order to qualify for a specific level, that is a very good trigger that allows you to, as a developer, to control how the influx of people actually behaves. So they come on a very specific day, they fulfill, like they play one level, and then get eligible to participate in some sort of a tournament or so on. So we call that live ops, and we're very bullish on this because we realize that it's very difficult to maintain players over time, and live ops is a driver that keeps running the game as a service, where actually people are interacting with your game on multiple different levels and over a sustained period of time. So we're doing quite a lot of development on the store itself to surface these live ops. So not just having a flat catalog of these are new apps, these are updated apps, or these are apps that are relevant for back to school or whatnot. Now we're actually having specific promotional units on the store. You can actually see them live today in the US, Korea, and Brazil. We're having a small pilot there that surfaces live ops in the game. So imagine a user opens the Play Store, browses the store, and then actually sees cards of activities that happens in the games that they already have installed. So driving re-engagement and retention. Outside of this, I would also definitely opt for starter packs and to get users really through early tutorials to really get them to buy in very early in the narrative of your game. If it's a casual game, you know, like a puzzle or something like that, it's very difficult to maintain them over time. But if you really have a narrative and you've invested quite a lot in very intricate levels, it's good. It's just good practice to let the users know up front what they're actually engaging with. So an introduction level, a starter pack, early offers into tournaments is definitely good practice here as well. Because we know once users buy in early, they're more likely to stay over time.
Sell them a story, essentially.
Precisely.
Okay.
Well put.
Okay. So you talked about live ops and games as a service, everything that happens post-launch. Taking a step back, going into launch right now, the market is becoming more and more global, and we see higher numbers in all kinds of territories. But let's say, I mean, most developers, they have limited resources, right? So would your recommendation be, in the general case, to try and launch the game globally into as many territories as possible and do localization and translation, or perhaps especially if you're a small developer, try to get a polished game first into one of the market or major markets and then see what your numbers are and expand from there?
Yeah, so it's definitely the former, and that's personal preference. Based on the experience that we've seen on the store, we definitely recommend launching globally, but launching in a controlled environment. So not just running one store description and plastering it all over the world, but rather run a good cadence of launch milestones. Run a closed and open alpha. Invite your friends and family to play the game to make sure it actually performs in different kinds of environments. Then go a little bit further, go into a beta stage where you can actually invite a wider audience into your game to just make sure it actually works in the different environments. Think of users in India that maybe have a less likelihood of being always on connected with 3G compared to users in the US. So you want to test for these experiences. And that's what the beta phase is for. At launch, and to answer your question, we're definitely opting for global launches first to make sure that you have global exposure, but do focus on localization incrementally. So no one expects for you to have all the game characters, all the assets, and all the language and in-game strings to have translated into hundreds of languages up front. But it's certainly good practice to have a good global launch. Maybe like start with 1, 2, or 3 languages in your store listing to make sure that users find the app and can actually engage with it. And then incrementally work on your localization. And localization is, again, goes in various levels. It starts off with localizing your storefront and just really uploading custom screenshots, changing your description to fit the language and the culture. But it goes as far as really translating all of your in-game strings. So I'd definitely start off with a global launch following your successful beta, and then move into ever-increasing increments of localization. We know for a fact that games that are deeply localized perform significantly better in the target markets. I mean, that's just a known truth, right? If you are locally relevant in the local language with lightweight apps where high-speed internet is not available, with lower IAP SKUs, like lower price points for markets that can actually have a lower GDPs, are all good practices. So adhering to these global levers is good business, and they should be happening incrementally, but post-launch.
Right. So even if you're not prepared to do all the localization, during launch, get the game globally, and all the tweaks you want to do it before launch. Now you mentioned alpha and beta, and right now maybe you'd like to expand a little more about it, because right now it's a recent offer from Google. You actually have the tools to do it in the Google Play dashboard, right? So would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? Or?
Sure. So one of our missions is to ensure that games that come online are of high quality and are actually working. The good funny fact is that 50% of all one-star reviews on the store mention the two words stability and speed. So we know that stability and speed are what really drives users to leave strong opinions about your game, be it positive or negative. So if your game continues to crash, you're highly likely to get a lot of one-star ratings, and the opposite is true as well. So yes, make sure that you have a good game with all the kinks ironed out at the production launch. And for that, we have released a number of features, and we're actually continuing to develop new features that are all surfaced in the Google Play console. The ones you've mentioned before are the alpha and the beta tracks. I would actually go one step further and look at Android Vitals, which is a release we have just launched a month ago. Essentially, what these allow you to do is to publish to smaller subsets of players without running the harm of getting negative ratings. So running an alpha on the store allows you to invite specific players only. Think of friends, family, co-workers, and so forth. So you can really run a control test. In the beta stage, you can widen that circle of players. So inviting avid gamers, community members of yours, people that participated in game development of other games. Think of hundreds, maybe a couple of thousands of players to really get a feel of how the app performs. The good advantage here is that ratings that are being delivered during the beta phase are not public. So even if your game performs really, really terrible, let's assume that during early beta, and you're accruing a lot of crashes, that will not negatively impact your rating once you launch. So the idea is really that you get real-life feedback from real-life players to see how the game performs in a real environment. That is pre-launch. So once you're happy with the performance of your beta, you can push to the production track, and you can launch it, as we just said, globally. And then monitor Android Vitals. Android Vitals is a new subset of KPIs we're surfacing in the Play console, and it looks specifically at how often the app crashes and how it behaves in a live environment on live devices. It allows you to debug and to actually go into the command line that caused the crash and then debug a live version of your app. This is, as the name suggests, vital. So to make sure that your game ongoingly performs as you expected it, even in the various different environments. So monitoring quality, speed, and responsiveness is a key KPI. And as we said in the beginning of this discussion, these are directly impacting your ranking on the store. So we'll actually take a whole number of signals when we're evaluating apps and their ranking against search results, against top charts, and against various different other units we use to surface recommendations on the store. Vitals is becoming increasingly important. So we want to make sure that the apps that get featured in the top charts in the different various places on the store are performing well, they're driving good user adoption, and that they are relevant to users wherever they get recommended. So keep an eye out for good quality, for fast and speedy apps, and obviously engagement over time.
All right, so essentially what you're saying is that when you want to see games being launched globally, you think that it's better for the game, and now you have these actual channels, control channels for alpha and beta. So essentially, do you think that soft launch, what was used to be launching a game in specific territories just to measure KPIs, do you think that it's practically, well, not dead, but dying? Are these tools intended to replace that, or should you run something alongside, or it's...
Yeah. So, in my own opinion, the soft launch in a particular country, or was traditionally known as a soft launch, is a marketing term, not a development term. It's technically used in order to test different CPI levels of what kind of media you can drive and what kind of ROIs you can generate. So when it comes to actual game development outside of distribution and actually paid user acquisition, I agree with you. I think the soft launch, i.e. launching in one particular country, is less relevant to game developers and should be avoided.
Okay, so just if the guys, the marketing guys in the suits tell you, yeah, we want to do it as a marketing tool, that's the route to take, but otherwise for development, use the Android, the Google Play dashboard tools.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a really good tool for marketers to understand the different levers and sensitivities of price points in different markets. So if you choose to launch a new title in Canada first to see what kind of CPIs you can generate there, it's not a bad practice to do for a marketer. But if you ask me as a game developer, the best practice is to launch widely and then to focus where you know it actually works, right? To actually gather the data first and then respond to that data. So sometimes you don't even know how these games actually perform in a real-life environment outside of quality and performance, speed and stability. But who knew? I mean, maybe you become a complete viral sensation in Honolulu and nobody knew about it, right? These are things that are very difficult to test during soft launch. And those are things that you can easily leverage by just pushing that production button and checking global, right? So you get a lot more value out of it by launching wide and then focusing on where it actually works rather than going inverse and doing, one market-to-market approach.
And the other difference is actually the review scores. If you're doing soft launch, it's out in the wild, the review scores will count, right? They will stay there. But you now have new tools also on the developer dashboard to analyze reviews, to respond to reviews. Do you know of any case studies, or have you seen any numbers of, let's say, good practices replying to reviews? Does it usually sometimes get review numbers up or review scores up?
Absolutely, yes. So we certainly recommend to respond to reviews at all time and very quickly. Users that leave reviews are engaged users. Those are the users you want, right? For better or for worse. But somebody that comes and actually makes the effort of opening your store listing after having played and downloaded your game means that user has been engaged with. So it's certainly good practice to re-engage that user and to respond to that user, because we all know retention numbers are dwindling over time, and these users are a cohort of people that have actually played and either very much enjoyed or very much hated your game, right? They have strong feelings towards your product. So certainly best practice to engage with them, ideally very quickly, and try to change their mind, understand why they have left a review, engage with them directly, respond in local languages, for example, and then prompt them to change their rating once the issue has been resolved. So for bugs, that's relatively easy, right? You just let them know that this bug was resolved. If it's a more generic comment, try to find out a little bit more about the user. We've actually integrated an API last year, so now you can directly engage through the comments via your own CRM systems. So you can actually do this in a centralized point and don't need to log into the Play console for each comment separately.
So let's say I'm talking about a different kind of a developer now that didn't target Android as the first platform. Let's say they're making a PC game or something like that, and now they see where the market is, they want to move the game to mobile, but sometimes there are issues because the interface doesn't match. Let's say I have a game that works well with gamepad, for example. Do you think that I should still try to make it work with the touchscreen, or maybe pursue other opportunities like Android TV, for example, and make the game work there?
It's a fair question. I don't know if anybody knows a specific answer to it, to be honest. If you're a AAA developer and you're running a successful franchise and you have, a franchise to protect, you want to make sure that your game kind of adheres to a minimum standard, that users that get what they expect, or at least a minimum expectation. I certainly recommend finding your stronghold in mobile. So if you're a AAA game developer, i.e. you have developed PC or console games in the past, you cannot afford to ignore that new frontier, that new mobile frontier. So if you have a strong franchise, think of like soccer games or all of the sports franchises, it's certainly good practice to have at least a title or at least a stab in that direction on the store and then expand on it. So yes, I would certainly recommend going mobile as soon as possible, because that's where the players are.
Okay, but you would still recommend taking that approach because you think that even a segment of that audience that's engaged, let's say, with games that work with gamepad, it's still large enough to make it worthwhile. Either that or change the game but use the same IP, but like a slightly different game that works on a touchpad screen.
Exactly, like a light version to kind of find your way in there and find really what works given the constraints or the differences in input and controls that you have. But actually, that's a good point, a good plug here, because Android O is our newest issue of our operating system, Android, which will significantly improve the third-party controls. So it will allow you to interact much more intuitively with mouse, keyboards, gamepads, and so forth. So change is coming. It's getting a lot better very quickly. So I would keep my ears open and again, stick to the Android developer blog, because almost on a weekly basis, we have quite cool announcements about new products and new features that you could use in your game development.
All right, so that's it for me. We still have a few minutes left, so if there are any questions of the audience, I'm sure that the Ike would be happy to take them. Anyone? In the back, don't be shy. Okay, we have one.
Hi. So you mentioned that reviews are very important for rankings, right? How does Google differentiate between genuine or fake reviews?
I'm sorry, I didn't...
How does Google differentiate between genuine or fake reviews?
So we have a quality team that goes over a number of different signals of who actually comes to the store and writes and leaves a feedback. And we don't really discuss which signals we're looking at, because the minute that it's out there, it can be obviously tampered with and reverse engineered. So we don't specifically comment on what signals we track, but it's a very active group within our organization, within Play and within the storefront, who's going algorithmically every day over each reviews that has been left, and tries to give it some sort of a score to see how relevant it actually is. If we find that there's really been an influx of reviews that are not accurately reflecting this user's opinion, we can also take action, and you can report those. The best mechanism is really, as the developer of the game, to flag them on your own. Like if you notice that there is some strong discrepancies between, let's say, the amount of downloads or the amount of engagement you had on a given day versus the feedback that you got on that given day, there is mechanisms on the storefront and in the Play console to highlight this to our team, and we will not only take action against that, but also include those signals to improve our algorithms going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, just a second.
Hi, my name is Sabella. I'm from South Africa and run a app and gaming studio. The problem isn't that in South Africa we are able to, you know what's coming. Okay, so we can list as a development company, but we are unable to sell our apps. We have no access to a merchant account. I was just wondering what's going to happen in the future for people like us. And I want to highlight that it affects the quality. We're obviously unable to make high quality apps if we can't generate an income from downloads. Thanks.
I hear you loud and clear, and your pain is my everyday pain. I'm looking actually after South Africa as well, so I'm really glad you could make it all the way here to Tel Aviv. Just to repeat the issue here, Google Play as an e-commerce platform needs to be launched on a country-by-country basis, which means in order to actually allow developers to connect their Google Merchant accounts and to receive payments regularly to their local bank accounts in their local currency requires a lot of pre-work on our part, and it requires actually some governmental work as well. So it will require us to come with an agreement with the local government and then launch each country one after the other. South Africa is on top of the list, and that's what I'm actively working on as well. I'll sound like a broken record, but keep your eyes out on the Android developer blog. There might be some updates in the near future, but the reality remains that I'd still recommend developing as much as you can with, at the moment, alternative monetization options, and make sure that you are ready, that once seller support is actually supported in South Africa or supported for South African-based developers, that you adopt this quickly. So keep your ears open. I would still develop and distribute globally and make sure that you are ready for when these countries come online. I also hear that this is a fact for other countries such as South Africa or other countries in our roster. We're doing significant efforts of speeding up our launch efforts, and I'd expect also to be able to launch more countries in bulk rather than one after the other soon, hopefully next year.
We might have time for just one last question over there.
Nir asked me to ask, we know it's someone, I thought of a question. It's right up your job to coordinate the Israeli game developers. What's your perception on the difference of the Israeli ecosystem or game development in compared to other places?
It's about twice as awesome as any other place. But besides that, that's not empirically proven, by the way. No, I mean, literally, there is so much innovation happening. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, but across all the different game verticals, be it strategy, RPG games, be it the social casino, and be it the casual and puzzle games. So my strong advice to this audience is keep doing what you're doing. It's really quite impressive what's going on, what's coming out of Israel. The quality and the amount of new titles that are coming online is really impressive. If there's really one thing that I would like this audience to take away is I would certainly recommend to shift some of your focus from download and distribution to re-engagement and retention, because this is where the opportunity lies. It's becoming an increasingly convoluted space. I mean, we all have a smartphone in our pockets, and it's no secret that users have a certain cap or threshold over how many apps they're actually engaged with. So downloading one app oftentimes comes at the expense of somebody else's game, right? So if they play your game, they might have uninstalled someone else's game. So the trick here is not just driving that day one download, but the trick is to drive the day 28 retention up, because that offers huge opportunities of growth, much more so than just a download with a low day one retention.
Okay, cool. That's our time's up, as you can see. So thank you very much, Ike. Round of applause.
Thank you.